I had just made a big incision. You get exposure of the heart because you want to see if there is a chance
let me
to
just
stop
so you make an incision, and do you just work through a hole? Do you open the cavity, or what?
No, this is a big incision. You make as big as you can get.
Yeah,
You've got,
okay.
and just a big, basically a cut across the chest through all the ribs and bones. It's not bleeding because her heart is stopped.
It's evident that he cares. What do you care about? Welcome to the Rock Newman Show. It's the Rock Newman Show.
The Minister of Wellness Ministries and Rock Newman Show 2.0 present free community health fair and seminar Saturday, March 18th, 2023 at Union Temple Baptist Church, Washington, D.C. RSVP before we reach capacity, dmvhealthfair.eventbrite.com, or click the link in the description box. If you can't make it in person, no worries. You can purchase the live stream link by visiting theministerofwellness.com under healing services, or once again, just click that link in the description box. Calling all potential vendors, sponsors, or volunteers, please submit a contact form via theministerofwellness.com or call 888-847-8026. That's 888-847-8026. It's high time for a health revolution.
I was really excited about you coming today when I thought of the gravity of the issues, the matters, the lives that you deal with. And I don't want to, fill this conversation at all with hyperbole, but there are times when you have stood over a table and literally you were standing between someone living and dying. And there are very, very, very few people in the world who find themselves in that position where you can make a difference. Because I know you're a man you're very modest, I'm going to say this instead of trying to pull it out of you. In working towards this interview, one of the things that we read about was you having a patient, a 14-year-old girl, that had been shot here in Washington, D.C. And she was rushed to the hospital, and the sense was very much that she was dying. You had to make a very quick decision. You had to open her chest, and you stuck your finger in a hole in her heart to help stop the bleeding and ultimately played a big role in saving her life. So now that the world knows that you did that, what I'd like to ask you to do, because I think it would be very illuminating for our viewing audience, is to walk us through that episode, if you will.
Sure. Well, she was a remarkable young girl, and I've seen her not too long ago.
I heard that she contacted you after many years.
She stays in touch, and she's had children herself, and she's a wonderful young woman. But this was a situation back in the late 80s. There was a lot of violence, a lot of gun violence.
D.C. was the gun murder capital of the country at that time.
And drugs around. But this girl was doing all the right things. She was going to school. She was at her school waiting to go see her tutor. And she was the double Dutch jumping rope champion of Washington, D.C. at the time. So she was fit.
I remember. Now, I didn't get that part when we were doing the research, but I remember now hearing that story.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
So she was, if you've ever done double Dutch, which I have to confess, I get, tripped up in the ropes.
Us Newman people.
Newman stick to one rope. But she was sadly caught in a crossfire, a bystander, and was shot in the chest. We we have some great paramedics and emergency medical people in this city, and they get a lot of criticism from time to time. But these guys did all the right things. They were right there. They put her in the truck. She was awake when they started, but on the way to the hospital, she lost her heartbeat, and so she was, effectively would have died had they not done all the right things. They were on the way to the hospital. I got a call. I was up in the neonatal intensive care nursery working on a baby there, that there was an emergency coming to the hospital, a gunshot wound. That's how it comes across. There's a code, there's a gunshot wound. Get down here as soon as you can. And so as I was the guy on call, so I ran down there. There were a bunch of people, and as we got down there, they burst through the doors and said gunshot wound to the chest, lost a heartbeat. And so in that situation, the life-saving maneuver is to open the chest. So what that means is you just get them on the table, and people's eyes are wide, but it's a team. They know what to do. We've rehearsed it, we've planned it, but it's rare to have to do that in children. But I had just made a big incision. You get exposure of the heart because you want to see if there is a chance
let me
to
just
stop
so you make an incision, and do you just work through a hole? Do you open the cavity, or what?
No, this is a big incision. You make as big as you can get. You've got, and just a big, basically a cut across the chest through all the ribs and bones. It's not bleeding because her heart is stopped, and maybe she's or could have bled to death, but you don't worry about any of that, and you're focused. Everybody's doing everything else. You've got nurses and other doctors putting in IVs, breathing tubes, all of that. But the goal here is to focus in and get to the heart, to where the business is, open. So there's a membrane around the heart called the pericardium. And in that situation, and this is where luck played, or divine intervention played a big role. She had a small little hole, and the blood had filled up around the sac around the heart and was stopping the heart from beating. So I opened that, and we were pouring in blood and fluid at the same time. I could see that there was just a little, as I started squeezing her heart to try and get it to go and also pump blood to the rest of her body. I could see there was a little bit of blood coming out of a small hole. And it was a bullet that had gone into the heart at that point, but it missed everything else. And so as we got things going and then shocked the heart and put a lot of medicines into it, it started pumping, and I was able to then just kind of, it sounds simple, but put my finger over that hole. And then I had a heart surgeon who was in the hospital come right down, and then we sewed that hole closed. And then her heart was going by that point, and we did a lot of other stuff and took her up to the operating room to close things up, not knowing whether she'd wake up or what would happen. Over the next few days, not only did she start breathing on her own, and we could start removing the different machines and things, but she woke up, and she was as perfect as you can imagine, and just really within a few days was up walking around. And I know it had a lot to do with her and her physical capabilities, because she was in such good shape, and a will to live that was incredible. So it was just a great story. In fact, it got a lot of public awareness, and Marion Barry, who was the mayor at the time, he had been shot, it turned out, himself, and he bonded with this young girl and came to visit her at the hospital, and I could tell her, how he had come through things. It was very very, very inspirational.
If I wasn't on TV, I'd probably say hallelujah.
Yeah, well, you can say that. And we certainly said a lot of those
I bet.
things.
Okay, so allow me, please, this intrusion. How did you feel?
Well, I wasn't feeling anything while it was happening. I was just so focused on the issue at hand, right there. You know, the heart and just getting everything going. I have to say, I went after that all. There was a moment where we were moving up to the operating room. Excuse me. I get a little emotional thinking about this, but as we were moving up to the operating room and looking at this teenage girl and not thinking about her heart or what, you know, the mechanics or the surgery, but looking at her face, and it just hit me at that moment that this was a teenage girl, and she was just beautiful. And you know, I was just hoping at that point we hadn't created, you know, where she might have brain injury or something, but that I was proud to be a part of it, but I was just hoping that she'd come through all the way.
Yeah. And when she did, and I'll leave it alone, when she did, your feelings then?
I don't think I've ever been more happy or proud of anything in my life. I mean, to see her wake up and know that everything I'd trained for and a team that I'd worked with and a hospital that I cared about had helped somebody that way. It was really, really satisfying.